This is the last Tuesday, although typically we call it last Wednesday, but it's not even the last Tuesday, so we are moving it around a little bit, but I promise that from now on, more or less, it's gonna be almost always the last Wednesday. But every month we have a meeting, and we have some hardcore group of people that are always here. My groupies are always here. But thank you for people that are joining us from home, and thank you for the Farm Bureau, and the Irrigated Land Group for having us. And today you're in luck because you get 1 hour of education for your yearly. You have to take 2 hours a year. Welcome. Have some cookies, have some coffee. Every year you have to take 2 hours. So today you're gonna take 1 hour. 1 hour. So you're 50% of your yearly accomplishment. Congratulations. And today we're gonna talk about sprinklers. Sprinklers, who's excited? I'm not either. But we're gonna get through this together. So my name is Jerry. I work for the University of California Cooperative Extension, and I work for Nurseries and Floriculture. And today I'm gonna talk about sprinklers. Somehow somebody must have decided that I had to become a sprinkler expert. I don't know how that happened, and I don't even know if I'm an expert, to be honest. But I work for Nurseries and Floriculture, so this talk will be specifically geared towards nurseries and floriculture, although many of the principles also translate to other systems. This is my new constant contact code that you can scan with your phone, and I encourage you to do so to make sure that you're getting communication from me, because I'm not part of the office's constant contact anymore, and I'm not legally allow you to tell you why. My lawyer told me I cannot tell you why, but please scan that code and make sure that you're signed up so you get emails from me. And there's also there my website that I keep updated. So if you're interested in knowing what I'm doing and why, you can go there. So we're going to talk about pressure. You all know already that I'm a pressure junkie. I always talk about pressure. I'm always there telling you I have to measure pressure, do the pressure gauge, blah, blah, blah. We're going to talk about flow rate. Then we're going to talk about some specifications of sprinklers. When you buy a sprinkler, they come with this card or with this little booklet, or with some website, and I encourage you to play around and look at these things that I put on your table, and you will see things like radius or throw. So the throw is how far that sprinklers water to, the distance at which the water reaches, and the radius is whether it's sprinkling at 360 degrees or 180 or 90 and so on. Then we're going to talk about that precipitation rate, and we're going to learn how to calculate it. And I know that you guys love math. And then we're going to talk about why pressure regulation is important, why this thing, this white and black thing here is called the pressure regulator. We were talking about it a minute ago. Why are they important, and why are they there, and why is it worth for you to pay $2 per sprinklers to put it there? Or is it? I don't know. And finally, we're going to talk about distribution uniformity, and to wrap it all up, just to encourage you guys to be not to fall asleep during the talk. To wrap it all up, at the end, there will be a quiz, an evapotranspiration quiz, and who knows the answer to the quiz will win $10. Oh Lord, I don't have $10. $20 will win $20. Generously made available by the University of California. Not true, it's my money. So at the end, we're going to wrap it all together and say why why is this all important? So this is the infamous slide that some of you have seen a million times. We have two irrigators. One has a pressure gauge. I gave her a pressure gauge. She measures 5 psi, and another irrigator there measures 93 psi. Who's right? Who's right? Where's the pressure right? She's irrigating with spray stakes. The other person is irrigating with sprinklers, with these Toro sprinklers. You should have some on the table. Who's right? Who's right? So this is the first quiz. Tasha, you probably want to move that window. You don't want to move it? Okay. So you guys have to guess. You cannot move it. So what's the answer? What's the answer? How much pressure do you need for drip? How much pressure do you need for micro sprinklers? Thank you. How much pressure do you need for impact sprinklers? Anybody knows? Well, even if you don't know, you can probably kind of guess, right? That this drip just needs enough pressure to push that drop of water out of that emitter. Probably doesn't need a lot of pressure. That spray stake needs enough pressure to spray that water 6 inches away from the spray stake. So probably needs a little more pressure than the drip. These other micro sprinkler needs to spray that water 10 or 15 feet apart. So definitely it will need more pressure than the spray stake. And finally, that big impact sprinkler here that has a spacing of 30 feet needs a lot of pressure to push all that water really far away, right? So the answer is that you probably need about 10 psi with drip, 20 to 30 for micro sprinklers, and 50 to 60 for big impact sprinklers, such as these ones, Does it make sense? And so who was right? Who was right? Which irrigator was right? You guys really don't want to win $20 today. None of them was right. None of them was right. One was irrigating at 5 psi that was too low, and the other was 93 that was too high. It doesn't even matter what kind of system we're using. Okay, so if you wanna remember only one thing from this talk, those numbers of pressure that I just showed you is number one. Then you can fall asleep, and they'll wake you up at the end of the talk. The other thing is, please do not mix sprinkler heads. Make sure that your irrigator, and I see Greg smiling, make sure that your irrigator fears your wrath and fears what may happen to him if you caught him mixing different sprinkler heads in the same irrigation field, because often they perceive a sprinkler head just like another one, but not all sprinkler heads were made equal. So maybe this thing may put out 5 times or 6 times the quantity of water that this one puts out. If you put them in the same block and you irrigate everything at the same time, then some area of the blocks will get way less water and some areas will get way more water. So then the irrigator will irrigate longer because they see plants that are unhappy, and then you generate a lot of runoff, and then the regional board gets angry, and the water quality regulators and then the inspectors from the county knock on your door, and then my phone rings and all that kind of stuff. So don't mix them. Okay, now you can go to sleep, because I'm gonna talk about some things that are a little more technical. So the first thing is the flow rate. What's the flow rate? Who wants to tell me what's the flow rate? From home, anybody wants to tell me what's the flow rate? You also, here's $20. Gallons per minute. It's a volume in time, right? It's how much water that thing puts out in time, and you can measure it. That's what I'm doing here in this picture. You see, I had an impact sprinkler, and I put a hose, and I fill this carbon. And you can see here there's a mark of the carboy, and these are 5 gallons. So I have a wristwatch, and I measure how long does it take for that sprinkler to fill. Hey, Mike, have some cookies. to fill that 5-gallon carbo, and then I can calculate how many gallons per minute. And here you can see when you buy the sprinklers, and you'll find it in those booklets too. They tell you, look, if you take this model here, 10H, at 15 psi, it will put out 0.58 gallons per minute, and at 30 psi, it will put out 0.79 gallons per minute, right? So they tell you, depending on the pressure, you get some flow. Notice that you get more flow as the pressure increases because you get more force pushing that water out of that nozzle. Does it make sense? Also notice that this is a little subtle. Check it out. We doubled the pressure from 15 to 20. Did the flow rate double? No. It didn't. It increased, but it didn't quite double, right? Is it good? Do we like this behavior or we don't? Do we want the flow rate to be insensitive to changes in pressure, or do we want the flow rate to be sensitive to changes in pressure? Do we want this sprinkler that at the beginning of the, right next to the main line that gets really high pressure to put out a flow rate that is very different from that sprinkler at the end of the block that's getting less pressure, or we want as much as we can, both of them to put out the same flow rate?
Same thing.
Same, right? So there is some super smart engineer somewhere that is trying to design this thing to make them as insensitive as possible, the flow rate as insensitive as possible to changes in pressure. And this is another example for the wobblers. I think you have a wobbler on the table too. And here they're putting the pressure on the columns. And so it's saying, okay, for this nozzle at 10 psi, it puts out 1 gallon a minute. At 25 psi, 168. Same thing. So any questions on the flow rate? And this is another example for the MaxiBird. This is called the 2045 PJ. It's a rainbird sprinkler. It's very popular. Many of you have it at your nurseries. Thank you, Tasha. It comes with different nozzles, and each nozzle is color coded, and the flow changes a lot depending on the nozzle you put. I think that they designed it to say, okay, the red ones are about 2 gallons per minute, the black ones about 3, the blue one about 4, the yellow one about 6, and the beige one about 7. Right? So if you change the nozzle, if you put the larger nozzle, then you get the larger flow rate. Does it make sense? And if you get more pressure, of course, here you have the pressure too, you got more flow rate out of that thing. It's clear. I know it's simple, but it's gonna get more complicated, I promise. Okay, arc and radius. The radius, back in the day, they used to call it the throw. When I studied, they used to call it the throw. These days they call it radius. It means the distance at which the sprinkler throws that water, right? The distance from the sprinkler. And the arc, they're telling you, well, okay, is this a 360? Is it spraying at 360 degrees or 180 or a quarter of a circle, etc.? And you can buy these nozzles that are originally they were developed for landscape, but now they're quite used in nurseries too. You can buy different nozzles that have different arcs. And so here you can see 10F. It means that it has a 10 feet radius, so it sprays from here to 10 feet. And F means it has a full circle. H means that it has a half circle. And when I walk around, I see in the landscape, I see a lot of these, and they're often misplaced, and the code is not written on them. So sometimes you see this 15H, and it's right there, and there's a wall. And there's a wall 2 feet from it, and so you know that at night that thing pops up and sprays, and most of the water hits the wall, and then it runs off on the storm drain, and then we get in trouble, So that's what arc and throw mean. And this is another table that shows various models. This is rainbirds, and depending on the radius, and you can see that some of them has a quite wide range of radiuses, of radii. How do you think that they can achieve with the same sprinkler model different radii? What's the thing that you can change in a sprinkler that we said a minute ago?
The orifice size.
The nozzle size. You put a bigger nozzle, now your throw is larger. Does it make sense? With a bigger nozzle, now your water gets farther. Does it make sense? Who's confused? Only me? Okay. So now there is also, and this is kind of a new thing. Back in the day, we didn't have these nozzles with an adjustable arc, meaning that you buy the nozzle, you buy the sprinkler, and then later you can go there with a screwdriver and you can adjust. I want you to spray at 360 degrees. No, I want you to spray at 180 or at 90. This is one of them. It's called Rainbird 5000. Rainbird 5000. But in general, I want that thing to disappear, Dasha. How can we make that thing disappear? So some of them are spray. These are These are called spray nozzles. They kind of spray a fan. A continuous fan of water. People call them sprays. Then you have impact sprinklers, and these ones are not really adjustable. You have to buy a different nozzle for the different arc that you want. So you buy 180, you buy a 360. Impact sprinklers like this one, they have these little adjusters here. I'm sure you have seen them. And you can adjust them, and when the head hits the adjuster, you've seen it, right? So you adjust the arc of where you want it to spray. Then, and these are new, we have rotators or gear drive. They're called the gear drive. Basically, they're using the pressure from the water to make that thing turn around. And these, again, you adjust it with a screwdriver, and when it gets there, it starts coming around the other way, and then it goes back and forth. It goes back and forth from the two points that you are adjusted at. And finally, there are these new ones that are called MSMT, just to make things complicated. Many people just call them stream nozzle. Multi-stream, multi-trajectory nozzles, and they're these ones, and they claim the greatest efficiencies ever. The greatest efficiencies ever. And again, they were developed for turf or for landscape, but now I see people using them for nursery. It's good for us, it's good for nurseries and for greenhouses to have adjustable arcs, because we have small blocks and we have a lot of roads around the blocks, because we need machinery and people to access the blocks. And so it's different than some grower in the Salinas Valley that is growing 50 acres of romaine lettuce in one adjacent field, and it has only one road that goes around. We have roads all over the place. And so the fact that these SMT or simply stream nozzles are adjustable to 90 degrees to 180 degrees is really helpful. So you don't irrigate the roads, you don't irrigate the walkways. And this is what they look like. So they spray on a single stream, and the stream moves. And this is an example of one that is being adjusted at 180, so it's spraying only in that direction. Any questions about these? All right. There is some that are not adjustable. the wobblers, the famous wobblers. How many of you have seen the wobblers array? Wobblers. How many of you know the wobblers? So the wobblers, they're made by Saninger, that is a company out of Florida, I think. But they are very common in nurseries. They're very common in nurseries, and they have really good distribution uniformity. But the problem is that they only spray at 360 degrees. You can't adjust them to do only one arc just because of their nature. So they're really good, but they're not really good in a way. Another model, another product that is not adjustable are these natural wind fighters. Should have, here it is, wind fighters. And in my experience, they don't live up to their name, but they made those kind of deflectors, those road guards that kind of push the water back into the field. So that helps. But the most important thing is that you don't use these old style road guards that we used to use back in the day with impact sprinklers. That basically the impact sprinkler sprays the water, sprinkles the water towards the direction, and maybe you have a car, maybe you have a road here, and you don't want the road to be irrigated. But what happens really is that all that water hits the road guard and then it falls on the ground, and then it makes a big puddle, and then it runs off on the road, and then somebody drives there, and all the muds get everywhere. So if you have still these in your nursery, and I know a couple of nurseries that do, maybe it's time to upgrade. Again, and everything is related to runoff and water quality, etc. Okay, what's the spacing? If I have a sprinkler that has a throw of 30 feet, where do I want to put the next sprinklers? 30 feet from here, 20 feet from here, 60 feet from here? How does the spacing and the radius relate to each other? Who wants to tell me? Of those that are still awake.
30.
Yes, 30. That would be called head-to-head. So if you put the next sprinklers at the same distance that this sprinkler sprays to, then you'd be head-to-head. And this is very common in California. I see it a lot. But this in this representation, I hope you can see that it results in this area. You see this big area that is receiving water from 4 sprinklers. This area is getting water from 4 sprinklers. All these 4 areas are getting water from 3 sprinklers, and only these small areas around here are getting water from 2 sprinklers. Back in the day when I studied agriculture at the University of Florence, 22 years ago, I was told that you want them 1.5 times apart, because so those areas that receive the water from 4 sprinklers or 3 sprinklers are smaller. So who's right here? The answer is it depends. And the answer is, and what it depends on is how much water, how does that water that comes from many sprinklers overlap and sums up. So then summing up those waters, you will get a uniform application of water, because that's what we want at the end of the day. And the way to answer that question is using something that is called a sprinkler profile. How many of you have seen a graph like this before? All right. So a sprinkler profile, basically you put a sprinkler here and you put a bunch of buckets in a line. 1 foot away, 2 feet away, 3 feet away, 4 feet away. And then you collect the water in the buckets and you make a profile like this. And you say, well, 1 foot away I got this much water, 1 foot away I got this much water, 1 foot, 3 feet away I got this much water. And the shape of these profiles typically look like a curly bracket. I mean, sorry, half of a curly bracket. So they will have a little point in the middle, a curly bracket has a point in the middle, and then it has a hump, and then it has a tail. So this is what it looks like. There's a little point here, then this hump, and then this tail. So when you're overlapping sprinklers, you want to overlap the tails, but not the humps. So then all the tails overlapping from the other sprinklers will give you as much water as the humps. Now, I know I'm getting nerdy and complicated, but fear not, because some super smart person at Fresno State, and also a couple of commercial companies had developed softwares that you can punch in your profile, your sprinkler profile data, or sometimes you don't even have to punch it in because they have done that research and they know when you buy these sprinklers, they know what the sprinkler profile is for this, they know what the sprinkler profile is for this. So you just dial them, and using the Hunter and P3000, and then in the program, in the software, you put the spacing on the line and between lines, and the computer calculates using the sprinkler profile how much overlap you get and how much uniformity you get. I'm not saying that you have to do this. I'm not saying that you have to do this, but I want you to be aware that there is a level of complexity that whoever designs your irrigation system, it's worth spending money to have somebody that knows how to use these tools, rather than having your foreman designing your irrigation system like a lot of people do. And there is a lot of tools, and there is a lot of knowledge out there on these things. Okay, now I want to talk about rain. How many of you have seen these cool videos of this radar stuff? That the weatherman is showing this, and then you see this thing to notice clouds move, and you're like, honey, it's not gonna rain until 6 p.m. Okay, at least one. Okay, so what do those colors mean? That yellow, that blue, what do they represent?
Amount of rain intensity.
Intensity. Very good. Precipitation, rain intensity, or precipitation rate. How do we measure that? What's the unit? That's it.
Inches per hour.
Inches per hour.
Very good. Inches per hour. What does it mean? Well, it means that if they're being constant, which typically it is, and if I left the bucket in the yard for 1 hour, then I come back and there are 0.92 inches, right? Then in practice, in nature, rain is very variable, right? So then they measure it by the second, and they report it, and sometimes you can get graphs of rain intensity in time. But notice that one inch per hour is quite an intense rain, right? When you get the storm, maybe the entire storm is gonna put out 1 inch or 1.5. It's a big storm, but maybe it lasts 6 hours. So getting 1 inch in only 1 hour, it's quite an intense rain, right? Does it make sense? Who's confused? All right. So how can we calculate the precipitation rate of our sprinklers? And later I tell you why we would do that. Why would you want to measure the precipitation rate of your sprinklers?
How long to run them?
Very good. How would you do that? So I have this red square with 4 sprinklers, and this circle represents where each of them breaks. So now let's consider this square. It's receiving water from each of them. How much water is receiving from each of them? How much water is receiving from sprinkler number 1? How much is this? Is it the third? Is it the 10th? The 10th? Quarter. A quarter. A quarter. How much is it receiving from sprinkler number 2? Another quarter. How much is it receiving from sprinkler number 3?
Yes.
A quarter. That's right. And so it's receiving four quarters. So it's like a pie, and you get a quarter of a pie from this pie, you get another quarter from that other pie, and you get another quarter from another pie. At the end, you have a pie. So now it's as if only one of the sprinklers was pouring all its water in that 30 by 30 square. Does it make sense? As if I show up, as if you have a 30 by 30 top or a 30 by 30 pool, and I show up with my carboy and it's not quite full to the 5 gallons mark. It's at the 365. I don't remember what we looked at. And I pour it. It takes me 1 minute to pour it, and I pour it in your top. Does it make sense? Okay, so now we can take that flow rate, those gallons per minute, and we can divide them by that area. And now it gets a little complicated. I have a volume in time. I have how much did you say? 3.64 gallons per minute. Imagine a carboy with 364 gallons in it. Now we need to divide those by the area. What happens if you divide the volume by an area? What do you get? What do you get?
Volume per unit of measure.
You get the volume, you divide it by an area, you get what?
Volume by whatever the unit of measure for the area is. So
inches per square feet.
Inches per square feet. If I have a
gallons per square inch, or gallons per square foot, or gallons per
okay.
mile, or
What if I convert my gallons into cubic feet and I divide those cubic feet by square feet? What do I get?
you get into the units.
What happens if I divide cubic feet by square feet? What do I get?
Amount of ground you can cover by the cubic.
That's the area.
Yes.
If I take a carboy, I have my carboy with some volume, and I pour it on some area, what do I get?
Acre inches.
I get the depth, right? If I pour more volume, then the depth increases. Does it make sense? So here, that's what we're doing here. We're saying 3.64 gallons per minute divided our area. Our area was 30 by 30. Does it make sense? 30 by 30, so it's 900 square feet. And now the problem is that I have to convert gallons into cubic feet, and then minutes into hours, and then the feet that are left into inches. And this is how the units cancel out. And I promise I did not cheat. I get 0.39, and from the table from their website, you could have simply looked up 0.39. But I want you to understand that this 0.39 comes from this 3.64, this flow divided by the area, and the area comes from the radius. Here's the radius. So 3.64 divided 30 by 30, that is 900, gives you 0.39. Does it make sense? So if I have more volume, I get a higher precipitation rate. But if I get a larger area, now I get a smaller precipitation rate because that volume is spread on a larger area. Does it make sense? Did I get everybody asleep already? But the best thing, if you can, is to measure it. The problem that I found when I've measured it, and you can do it with the rain gauge, right? You put the rain gauge out, you irrigate for 30 minutes, you come back, you multiply by 2, that's your inches per hour. The problem when you measure it is that very often you get a really high variability. I put a rain gauge there, put a rain gauge there, put a rain gauge there, I get 4 sprinklers, I start them. Now I get 1 inch there, I get ½ inch here, and I get 1/3 of an inch there. How did that happen? Well, that's because your distribution uniformity is low. That's because your distribution uniformity is low. So that's another thing I'm gonna talk about in a minute. So sometimes you see out there NPR or MP, like for example, this sprinkler here is called an MP, Hunter MP. And if you ask them what MP stands for, they tell you matched precipitation rate. And Rainbirds make some sprinklers like that too, NPR. What do they mean? Matched precipitation rate. What does that mean? Why do you want to match the precipitation rate? Matched to what? To each other. To each other. Michael, you're gonna win $20 today. Go home. Go home. I don't want you in the audience.
I'll share.
To each other. To each other. So they're telling you, look, if you buy the model that's irrigated the full circle and you irrigate with 20 psi, you'll have a precipitation rate of 2 inches per hour. If instead you buy the half circle, you give it 20 psi, you will get 2 inches per hour, the same. Instead you buy the quarter, 20 psi, 2 inches per hour, same. How did they achieve that? How did they achieve the same precipitation rate for 2 sprinklers and one irrigates half the area of this one? They changed the flow rate. They changed the orifice size and they made the flow rate. This guy needs to put out half of the flow rate of this guy. And in fact, I'm not lying. Look, this puts out 3 gallons per minute, and this puts 1.5 gallons per minute. Now, how much do you think the quarter puts out? How many gallons per minute does the quarter circle needs to put out at 20 psi in order to match the precipitation rate of its brothers? This one puts 3.
7, 5.
Go home, Mike. Shut up. 0.75. Right, so they had to help you.
Okay.
They're rhetorical questions, you know. That's okay. Does it make sense? Does it make sense?
Yes.
Did I convince you? And these are P2. You see 0.39, 0.39, 0.39, 0.39. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which model you use. It's matched. But this brings me back to the old days. In the old days, when we were using sprinklers like this, and they've been around for a long time, even when they were made of brass, they had these adjusters. Remember those who were using this, like this guy, made of brass. The old Rainbirds made of brass, but with the adjusters. So when we were using these back in the day, and you would put one of them in the corner and adjust it for 90 degrees, and then you would put this one on the edges and adjust it for 180 degrees. Could they have the same nozzle as these other ones that you had in the middle? Why?
Flow rate.
The flow rate needs to be smaller. Otherwise, if you put the same nozzle, you're applying a ton of water in the corners. You're applying a ton of water in the corners because that guy is applying the same volume of water to a quarter of the area. So the precipitation rate would be 4 times larger here in the corners and 2 times larger here in the edges than it is in the middle of the field. So first thing to do tomorrow, first thing in the morning, is walk in your whole nursery and make sure that your guy hasn't put nozzles, the same nozzles that you have in the middle of the fields, that they haven't put the same nozzles on the edges and on the corners. Does it make sense? And again, here's the table of all the nozzles that you can pick. And you choose the flow rate to be smaller or larger. Who's confused? All right, we're on the home stretch. I promise I'm gonna let you go in 10 minutes. If you behave. If you behave, Mike.
And those are sealed.
This is a job more or less fictionalized that I did a long time ago on a vegetable project. And the purple numbers are the pressure in PSI that we measured. So at the pump here, we measured 83 PSI. And then water loses pressure as it travels in a pipe. So here at the valve, we measured 58 PSI. And then here we measured 55. The first sprinklers was getting 55 PSI, and then the sprinklers here 50, and those 45, and those about 40. So what happens to the precipitation rate when there is a lot of pressure here and there's a little pressure there? What happens to the flow rate when there is more pressure? We said it's larger, right? What happens to the throw when there is more pressure? It's larger, so the area is larger. So now you have a larger volume, but also on the larger area. What happens to the precipitation rate? Does it increase or it decreases? It depends. You say increases, we got an increases here. Who says decreases? Who just stays the same? Because you have to divide the flow rate by the area, right? So if they both increase, we don't know what happened. We don't know what happens to the ratio. But the bottom line is that weird things will happen to your precipitation rate. Weird things will happen to your precipitation rate. You're in a situation where you don't want to be. So this is a bad situation. This is a bad situation. So if you wanna gift a pressure gauge to your irrigator for Christmas, you probably want to tell them, look, every time you irrigate, go at the head of the field, take a couple of measurements here, walk to the end of the field, take a couple of measurements there, and if they are apart more than 5 PSI. Come talk to me because we have a problem. But Jerry says we have a problem. And he may be wrong. Okay, here I'm measuring 56 PSI, and I have a 30 PSI pressure regulator, and I have a sprinkler that runs at 30 PSI. Here, so am I doing a good job or not? Here, I'm measuring 42 PSI. I have a 45 PSI pressure regulator, and I have a sprinkler that needs 45 PSI. Am I doing a good job or not? And here he's measuring 87 PSI. He does not have a pressure regulator, and his sprinklers needs 45 PSI. Is he doing a good job or not? Who's doing a good job? Jerry number 1, Jerry number 2, or Alejandro? Or nobody? Or all of them? Who's doing a good job? You shall speak, Mike. You shall speak. Who wants to tell you? Who wants to tell you? The one on the left. The one on the left, right? So because the pressure is higher than the pressure regulator is set at, right? So now the pressure is high. The pressure regulator takes care of it. It burns it down to 30. Now the sprinkler is seeing 30. Next sprinkler over, maybe it's seeing 50. The pressure regulator burns it down to 30. The next one over sees 40, goes down to 30. The next one over sees 30. Pressure regulator does nothing, still sees 30. Now everybody's seeing 30. Now you have artificially equalized the pressure. How about here? Am I doing a good job or am I an idiot? the sprinkler needs 45 PSI and then giving it, so I have a 45 PSI pressure regulator and then giving it 42 PSI. How many of you thinks that I'm an idiot? That one doesn't work, right? I'm an idiot because the pressure regulator is not doing anything. It's not doing anything. The pressure is lower. There's nothing to regulate. You can, yes, sir.
So number one, as long as the pressure regulator is rated appropriately, it's right.
Fair. Fair. I didn't want to go that far, but fair. And so he's saying some pressure regulators tell you, look, I'm gonna take your pressure down to 30 as long as you don't give me more than 70 PSI. You give me 200 PSI, I cannot work with that pressure. And sometimes they also tell you, maybe it's 10 here. Yeah, check this out. They also tell you the flow rate. You have to give me at least half gallon per minute and not more than 15 gallons per minute. If you give me 20 gallons per minute and all that pressure, I'm not gonna handle it. So it's even stamped on them. Good point. Okay, so the point is that pressure regulators only reduce pressure, and there is some huge operation, huge nursery that they have pressure regulators at each of their sprinkler head. Is amazing. Wherever you go, they have pressure regulator on all their sprinkler heads. I think it's the only things that they're doing right. They're not. But they often you go there and measure pressure and there's the 40 PSI pressure regulator, you go there and the pressure is 25, you know. So the pressure regulator doesn't increase the pressure, only decreases it. So they're a good thing to do, but you need to know how they work. They only work downwards. Okay, just to drive the point home, here I have 56 PSI and 30 PSI pressure regulator, this works. And here I have 38 PSI and I have a 50 PSI pressure regulator. It's not doing anything. Now the sprinkler is being exposed to those 38 PSI. Okay, now for the brave that made it to the bitter ends, I want to try and explore to you the question that I asked earlier. What happens to the precipitation rate as I change the pressure? We said as I increase the pressure, the flow rate goes up. But we also said as I increase the pressure, the radius increases. So now I'm dividing the flow by the area that of course is affected by the radius. It's actually a power function of the radius. And so check this out. At 15 PSI, I get 2 inches per hour. At 30 PSI, I get 158 inches per hour. Ain't it weird? The precipitation rate decreased as the pressure went up. Did I make a mistake? Why? No, tell us, Mike. We want to know.
The Greek can tell you.
Tell us. Who wants to tell us why? But it's weird, right? If you don't think about it, the first time I saw it, I'm like, this doesn't look right.
The valve is not functioning properly. They're not at the proper pressure.
Well, but so here we are within the pressures that they gave us, right? So we're at the pressure of their table. They give us this table. It's true. In this one, they tell us, look, we put 40 in bold because that's where you wanted to use it at. But it would work at 30 and it would work at 50.
Because you're throwing it farther.
You're throwing it farther, and so your area is larger. And so your volume is larger, but your area is way larger. So now you're spreading a larger volume onto a way larger area. So your precipitation rate is lower. Look at this one, then I'll give you a break. I promise I'll give you a break. Who are you kidding? 0.44 inches per hour. As you increase the pressure goes up from 25 to 55 psi. Precipitation rate initially goes down, like we saw here. But then here from 39, it goes up again. 39, 41, 44, 46. Isn't that weird? And that's because the radius at the beginning increases, but then it doesn't decrease anymore. So at the beginning, as you increase the pressure, the radius increases, but then at a certain point, I can only get that far. And so the flow rate keeps increasing instead. And so the precipitation rate at the beginning goes down, and then it starts going up again. What would have happened in this map that I showed you a minute ago that we said everybody agreed we don't want to be in this situation? What would have happened here if the pressure had been like that? But if I had 40 psi sprinklers and each of them had a 40 psi pressure regulator, like this one, what would have happened? I have 40 psi sprinklers. I have sprinklers that need 40 psi, and each of them has a 40 psi pressure regulator. What happens then? What happens where the sprinklers are exposed to a pressure of 55, 56 psi?
Lose uniformity.
You lose uniformity, but I have a pressure regulator. What if each sprinkler has a pressure regulator? Hey, Kevin.
Well, am I late?
That's a little bit, but it's the best part. The best part is going.
It's the Italians, you know, that's starting at the Italians.
Have some cookies, have some cookies. So I have pressure regulators all over the place. So where the main line gives 55 psi, the pressure regulator burns it down to 40, the sprinkler stays 40. Where I had 50, the pressure regulator burns it down to 40, the sprinkler stays 40. When I had 45, it still stays 40 because I have a pressure regulator. Where I had 40, pressure regulator does nothing, the sprinkler stays 40, we're all happy. Now I had a really, really bad situation, a really, really, really bad pressure distribution, but just because I spent $3 additional to buy a pressure regulator on all my sprinklers, now I don't worry about it anymore. Now I don't worry about it anymore. Does it make sense? Did I convince you guys?
And we actually have pressure regulators built into the new pumps because it's a requirement in California. So Hunter has it already preset in the either a 40 or a 30 psi pop-up.
And they
This is
sell
one of the
like
regulations now.
Yeah.
And they're available like Grangettos. Gosh, I have no competitor.
Where have you been, Kevin? Where have you been? I've missed you.
Support the Italian, support the Italian community. Wine for everybody, right, Mike? Bring the wine for this afternoon.
What can you do? What can you do? You can talk to a guy like yours truly, or also the RCD, and they will come out and they will put a lot of buckets out there and measure your distribution uniformity and tell you how it is. And if you're a really, really big nursery, I suggest, and some do it, that maybe you have a specialized person, you hire somebody that just graduated from Cal Poly or something, and then maybe you can train them or something. And then they're your irrigation expert that takes care of all the areas of your operation. And what would they do? They would set up this grid of buckets that you've seen there. Say that you have 20 buckets. A quarter of 20 is 5.
Wow.
Thank you, 5. And so you measure all the volumes in each of your buckets. And then you put them in order. You put them in order from the lower value to the higher value. And then you take the lower quarter, the lowest 5, then you take the average of those 5, that in this case is 250 milliliters, and then you take the ratio between the average of the low quarter and the average of all your buckets. And that will give you this number that we call the low quarter distribution uniformity, or everybody just call it distribution uniformity, but it's kind of an indicator, to tell you how well your irrigation system is performing. So then you can compare it, right? You can pick up the phone and say, hey, Jerry, I'm getting 0.83. Is that good? Is that bad? So now you know, now you have measured something quantitatively. And I've done that with number of sprinklers, and this is what I found out. So then next time that somebody picks up the phone and calls me and say, hey, Jerry, what sprinklers should I buy when I go to Kevin?
Remember what's in Joe's.
Which one?
Oh, no, that's the wrong answer.
Which one should I buy? So this is what I found, and I also measured wind speed, because wind speed, as you may expect, is something that affects strongly the uniformity distribution, and typically growers tell me, I don't know, we are using these sprinklers because they have really big droplet and so on. It's windy, they're better, they're not as affected by the wind. So this is what I found. These are available to you in the 15 by 15 spacing that I find that is a common spacing out there. The Hunter and P2000 seems to be the most efficient ones, up to 85. And on the 30 by 30, the best seems to be the Wobblers, except that the Wobblers don't have an option to irrigate smaller arcs than 360. So the second best would be these blue dots here that are the Rainbird 5000. These guys here. And these graphs are available on my website for any time that you have problems getting asleep. In the last 3 minutes, I want to give everybody an opportunity to win $20. $20. So what is reference evapotranspiration? This is a graph that I've shown many times, and it shows you for every week the data, the average data. I think I downloaded like 25 years of data and then I averaged it. For every week, this tells you the reference evapotranspiration from Escondido, from Miramar, and from Torrey Heights. So question number one is, if you live in January, you leave a bucket filled with water in your yard on Monday, and then you come back the next Monday, how many inches the water, how many inches did it decrease? 1 inch, 2 inches, half, 0.25?
Depends on the evapotranspiration.
It depends on the evapotranspiration. So if you're in January, how many inches of reference evapotranspiration do we get in Escondido in January? Not much. About half. Very good. And how about in August? It's incredible what people will do for $1.
I know, probably about 1.65.
1.5, about 1.5.
Yeah, I gotta eat lunch.
So does it make sense? Kind of visual. It's not perfect. Don't tell anybody that I told you this. Don't tell anybody that I explained it this way, because then they show up and tell you, no, you're missing a coefficient and blah 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 blah. But more or less, that's the idea. This is what I mean with these bars. If I had a bucket and I leave it out there, this is how much water will have evaporated in that week, right? So now this is where I bring it all together, and then I let you go home. We have an application rate of 0.39 inches per hour. Remember, we just calculated it from the flow rate. We have a distribution uniformity of 0.75. We just measure it here. 0.75 of our sprinklers. We know that in August, our evapotranspiration is 1.5 inches. So this is how much water is being being sucked out by the atmosphere from our plants. This is how much water our plants need during that week in August. Now, our DU, our distribution uniformity, is a measure of how imperfect is our irrigation system. If we are unable to distribute water perfectly uniformly, so we need to increase that quantity of water that our plants need. We have to increase that 1.5 by the inefficiency, so to speak, of my irrigation system. So now I divide my 1.5 weekly ET by my distribution uniformity that we measured, and we get 2 inches per week. So now I know, because Kevin told me, I know that that week in August, I need to apply 2 inches of water with my irrigation system. How can I calculate how many hours should I run it? What do I need?
The application rate.
I need the application rate. What do? I divide or I multiply? So I take my 2 inches, of water that my plants need, and I divided my 0.39 inches per hour, and what do I get?
5 hours equals 308 minutes.
Exactly. Okay, Kevin, you just want $20. Everybody can go home.
No, but
I
donate
really
it- donate it to you, donate to you.
Come to Grand Jettos and use it.
That's the perfect. That's the perfect. Thank you, everybody. Sorry we went over time. We got a little bit rowdy. I don't know if anybody that is still awake have questions from home. And I'll be around if you want to hang out, eat some cookies. And thank you very much for your time. Oh, we want to unmute? Let's unmute. I don't want to unmute.
We don't see that.
You, many years
Yeah,
ago.
but we do. We have an
Yeah.
evaluation here.
Grand Jettos.
Nobody cares if I do my job, but they all care.
You got the old rancho telescope.
They all care if you took the evaluation. So please
Kindle floral.
do the evaluation. You don't even have to tell me that I'm good. But they want me to tell them that 35% of the people that came to my event said that they're gonna use their technology that I exposed. You wanna stop recording before I get myself in trouble even more?
Thank you to everybody in Dubai.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody. Please send me an email if you have any questions. Please call me if you have any questions. We hope you enjoyed this episode. And we'll see you in the next video.